Lunatic asylums were brutal and sadistic places to reside in. Prior to the Middle Ages, in which very early renditions of asylums were being erected, cruel punishment and exorcism was used as a method to dispel lunacy from sufferers. Evil spirits were at fault for the torment of these people. They were kept chained to walls in social isolation and would continue to be. But these nearly prehistoric origins were only the beginning of the plight of the victims of mental illness. In the medieval era, monasteries, towers, and residences were used as lodging for them, primarily in the medieval Islamic world, where early hospitals were first devoted to housing the insane. Some were more effective than others, boasted madhouses and cruelty. Around this time, an upsurge of institutions made way across Europe, as its convenience was slowly recognized, such as the Bethlehem Royal Hospital, also known as Bedlam. This was perhaps one of the most prominent examples of brutality and ill treatment in an institution in history. Patients were bound and tormented, and civilians paid to watch their antics. Many methods were used to reduce irrational behavior since that point. Trepanning had made a rebound since the Neolithic era. This was the act of drilling a hole into the human skull in order to cure mental disorders. Others included bloodletting, frontal lobotomy, and immersion into ice water, along with many other crude procedures. Another notable procedure was the tranquilizing chair, which kept patients restrained in a chair in complete darkness for up to several hours on end. Asylums made their debut in the United States in 1773 as the Eastern State Hospital in Virginia. Other states followed suit, and by the end of the 18th century, institutions had sprung up all over the country. Yet the barbaric treatment still persisted, but change was on the horizon. Dorothy Lind Dix was born on April 4, 1802 in Hampton, Maine, to Joseph Dix and Mary Bigelow Dix, the first of 3 children. Her father, a Methodist preacher, moved the family from place to place quite frequently to accommodate his career. Meanwhile, Mary suffered from depression, and the young Dorothy took it upon herself to care for her 2 younger brothers, Joseph and Charles, as her parents could not. Finally, when she was 12, her wealthy grandmother in Boston took custody of the 3 children as the situation at home became steadily worse. Dorothy was raised at the Dix mansion with a stern and demanding hand. She was forced to look, act, and talk like a wealthy girl of civility. She did not want this, and once was punished for attempting to feed and clothe beggar children. However, she was educated and trained a great deal, and at 14 she was sent to live with her great-aunt in Worcester, so she could become trained to become a proper lady. During parties hosted by her aunt for wealthy relatives, she met her second cousin, named Edward Banks. He suggested that she privately teach young girls because they were not permitted to be educated publicly. In 1821 she founded this school and ran it for 3 years. Dorothy taught it with unmatched devotion until she began to suffer from tuberculosis. The school was forced to close, and she left to England to recuperate with a group of friends. From here she learned new theories regarding treatment of insanity, and Dorothy started to write books, which she published. When she returned to Boston, she visited the Cambridge House of Corrections to teach a Sunday school for female inmates. She required us to where the insane were kept, and was led to dungeon cells where neglected and abused men and women were chained to walls and starving with no heat. She asked why there was no heat, even in winter, and the jailer replied the insane did not feel heat or cold. Here, Dorothy's fiery nature was ignited, and she took the case to court. She lobbied many community leaders. 3 joined her cause: Horace Mann, a famous educator; Charles Sumner, an abolitionist; and Samuel Gridley Howe, head of Perkins Institute for the Blind. They gathered evidence to present for 18 months, and Dorothy published her results in a memorial to the legislature of Massachusetts. In here she wrote, "I proceed, gentlemen, briefly to call your attention to the present state of insane persons confined within this Commonwealth, in cages, closets, cellars, stalls, Pens. Chained, naked, beaten with rods, and lashed into obedience. Lincoln, a woman in a cage. Medford, one idiotic subject chained, another one in a closed stall for 17 years. Pepperell, one often deadly chained, hand and foot, another violent, several peaceable now. Granville, one often closely confined, now losing the use of his limbs from want of exercise. Charlemont, one man caged. Lennox, two in jail against whose unfit condition there the jailer protests. Dedham, the insane disadvantagedly placed in the jail. In the almshouse, two females in stalls, situated in the main building, lined wooden bunks filled with straw, always shut up. One of these subjects is supposed curable. Gentlemen, I commit to you the sacred cause. Your action upon this subject will affect the present and future conditions of hundreds and of thousands. In this legislation, as in all things, may you exercise that wisdom which is the breath and the power of God. Her radical and passionate speech won over the Legislative Board, and a bill was passed for the expansion of Worcester State Hospital, despite bitter opposition by the popular belief. Dix went on to document the plight of madness, writing reports and investigating treatment far beyond the confines of Massachusetts and traveling thousands of miles across the United States. 32 hospitals were established nationwide through her efforts. In the coming years, these numbers would multiply tenfold. Not only were these hospitals constructed, but special education schools and nurse-training facilities as well. In 1848, Dix sent a document called the Bill for the Benefit of the Insane to the United States Congress, asking that 12,500,000 acres of federal land be set aside for the care of the mentally ill. This bill passed by both houses of Congress, but was vetoed by President Franklin Pierce. Her influence went global, and she set out across Europe to rectify the asylums that were still in place. At age 59, in the peak of the Civil War, Dix was appointed superintendent of nurses for the Union Army. Over 2,000 women were recruited by her despite controversy of a female role in medicine. Dorothea continued to advocate for the mentally ill until she was moved into the New Jersey State Hospital for her poor health. She died in 1887, at the age of 85. Dorothea Lynde Dix was the most effective health advocate of the 19th century because through her efforts she revolutionized the way people look at insanity. Her passionate speeches and writings provoked reaction, and the horrific and cruel asylums were reformed into the efficient and humanitarian hospitals we see today. The compassion and care in her heart will never be forgotten, and will continue to change the world forever.